Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I wanted to kind of speed run through some of the books that I have recently read, do a mini haul, and then just do a chat about some of the things that I've been enjoying craft-wise, and then really get into talking about something that I've been really obsessed with. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in hearing me chat about, sit down, get a drink, get a snack, and we are going to chat. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that I DNF'd 2 books after the vlog that I read for my friend Michelle. I feel like Red Rising by Pierce Brown has cursed me. And so I DNF'd 2 books. One was a e-arc, unfortunately, so I have to go tell Ned Callie that I DNF'd this book. It is called I Love You Don't Die by Jade Song. Beautiful title. Beautiful title. I think the cover on the book is stunning. It has almost that immaculate heart motif, and I think it is great, beautiful design. But unfortunately for me, I don't really enjoy literary fiction. I assumed that this book was going to be horror when it wasn't. It's more of like a coming of age, and we're following this main character who has this morbid obsession with death. And transparently, I haven't been in like the highest of my mental wellness recently, and having to read someone kind of ruminate about kind of themselves feeling low, as well as having these conversations about death. I'm not someone who's particularly afraid of death myself, but it just feels so like it takes the mood from here to here. And I was like, I can't deal with this. So I had to DNF that book. And then the second book that I DNF'd was Japanese Gothic by Kylie Lee Baker. This might be a petty reason, but one of the main characters, Lee, in his point of view, he is living with his father, who is a white professor. White is important for this, what I need to say. He is an East Asian professor. And at the 50% point, we're kind of getting more about his father. And he just has this really strange conversation with his son where we kind of find out that all his past girlfriends, since like Lee's mother's has been missing, which that's not a spoiler, like they tell you relatively soon in the plot that his mother has been missing for years and his father has been dating women. They have all been East Asian women. And he just likes how teeny tiny and beautiful these precious, delicate Asian women are. And like reading that in the conversation that he was having with his son, oh, it gave me the ick so bad. Like, I understand why we put that in books. And that's a very interesting topic of conversation for people to have, especially people who might not be of Asian heritage and have never experienced fetishization because of what they look like and their like ethnic background. That is an important conversation to have. But as somebody who's Asian, I'm not East Asian, I'm Southeast Asian, I'm Vietnamese specifically, I don't want any of this because, you know, sometimes you have to experience that in real life. And I think Kylie Lee Baker was giving me the ick so well that I was like, I can't do this, Kylie. And I think it was just like where it was introduced in the book for me felt very strange because it felt like, yeah, he's a white guy, so he's gonna fetishize Asian women. But also, like, in regards to the entire plot of the story, it felt like it was thrown in, and I was like, I can't do this. My friend who finished the book and who actually enjoyed it said that Kylie left an author's note, so I think I will grab an ebook copy to kind of scroll through and read the author's note in regards to why that decision and choice was made. And I'm sure there's a great reason, but I think just like having the ick that bad, and again, my mood kind of being lower, I just couldn't do that to myself. So I DNF'd the book, and then I read Red Palace by Junher after that because I was just having a hard time picking a book that was exciting me. The media that I've been really obsessed with recently has been Chinese dramas, and I have wanted a book to have the same compelling slow burn sort of romance, but this very intense political intrigue at the forefront, because I specifically really like historical dramas, and the Chinese dramas that I've been watching have all been of a historical nature with, an emperor and, all that. And, these books just weren't given it to me. And so I had like Googled to see, or specifically I went on Reddit to see if like anybody had any historical dramas that they really enjoyed. And somebody suggested The Red Palace by June He, which I did read. This is based in like Joseon era Korea, and the main character is a palace nurse, and this is a murder mystery. And the political intrigue in this one specifically is because the crown prince is implicated in the murder of 4 of these palace nurses, and our main character just has a feeling that the crown prince isn't really the person at fault for these murders, and so she ends up kind of teaming up at the beginning reluctantly with this up-and-coming police investigator, and they are trying to piece together what happened that night, because the murders of these 4 women were just so incredibly brutal, and they want to figure out what's going on here. I feel like at the beginning, because in a murder mystery, naturally, you kind of get introduced to all of these characters all at once, because like they are pulling suspects for you to kind of have intrigue for. I was having a hard time settling in with all of the suspects that were being brought up. And it was a little bit slow to start, but I think once the mystery was laid out and we were really getting our bearings in, probably towards like the 30%, it was quite an interesting and compelling story. And I think the reveal was something that I was like, the reasoning behind it, the person wasn't necessarily like shock and surprise. Like obviously, June He set up the reason why this person was the person, and it very well. But I think getting to hear their reason why from their mouth was such a compelling story. So I ended up giving this a 3-star. It wasn't like a new all-time favorite, but I think it was very interesting. And I think June He specifically in this book did a very good job with building atmosphere. So I do highly recommend. Book that I finished afterwards from that was The Apothecary Diaries, Volume 15. I won't harp on too much because I talk about Apothecary Diaries probably every single vlog and video on my channel. But I really enjoyed that one. Probably not my favorite, but I really like to see where Mao Mao, and specifically Jin Shi in this one, I think he has been such a background character, but we get to know a little bit more about who he is, and getting to have that little puzzle piece being thrown into the story was really interesting and compelling for me. But onto the little mini haul that I have. Again, I got The Red Palace by June He. That was a recent acquisition of mine. And then because I've been in such a C-drama mood, I got A Song to Drown Rivers by An Liang. This is suggested under on Pagebound. I went on there and I pulled up The Poet Empress because I know that is like a Chinese political fantasy that I think this one is just as fantastical as The Poet Empress as well. But I really enjoyed the political intrigue in that one, and also how gritty and like just darker of a fantasy that one was. I think the political intrigue just really pulled me in, and I really want stories of that nature, and this one was highly recommended for that. This is like a floppy paperback. It's a very tall paperback. I wasn't expecting it to be so tall, but it also has little French doors, which isn't my preferred, but this is the only copy that they had, so I had to go with it. But very interested to read this one, very excited. And because I read the last published light novel of Apothecary Diaries, I wanted to have something that I could read prior to bed. And I was like browsing the light novel section in my Barnes & Noble, and I saw this chunky book called Lord of Mysteries by, this is, I believe, the English translation of the Chinese name of the author, but it is Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. So that's the author for you, The Lord of Mysteries. this is a very popular web novel that ended up getting a translation and then physically bound here in America, and I'm sure other English-speaking nations. But this one, basically, we're following our main character who transmigrates into a Victorian era world, and when he wakes up, he has like this very gnarly head wound, and he is trying to figure out, like, did he shoot himself or did somebody else shoot him? And that just, unravels, who would have guessed, mysteries for him to figure out. And this is only part one of the clown arc. I believe that this story is loosely based off of like tarot cards, because at the very beginning there is like a whole like little section in regards to the Fool, which is a tarot card. So I'm very intrigued to see where this goes, because on Goodreads, the rating is incredibly high. I think it's like a 4.5 and above, maybe even higher than 4.5. And as somebody who likes a kind of slower paced read like this before bed, I'm very intrigued. I've read 4 chapters so far, and it's a lot of setup, but I think the translation is done well. It doesn't feel clunky, and I think the writing flows. But this is such a beautiful, buttery reading experience, especially at night when you're like, I just read my big book, and I'm just so educated reading my book at night. But it's really fun, and I have been reading a lot of ebooks recently, and I've been really craving like a physical reading experience, and this is just so beautiful. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. This is only part one of the arc, and all the other books are quite chunky as well. So very excited. Hope I like this one, because, getting to read a lovely, chunky book like this just sounds like a dream. Sounds like everything I need, and it will heal my soul. And then the last book that I have is the Grimoire edition of Witch Hat Atelier. If you did not know, Witch Hat Atelier is probably one of my favorite manga series. Maybe even like the number one. And that might be recency bias, because a lot of like the manga that I've read have been adapted, but this one I've read like all the way through with no anime. Just at the beginning of April, actually, they released the animation for this one, and it's still slowly coming out. I think it's probably one of the most beautiful animations I've ever seen, and that is because the mangaka has such beautiful art style. There's a spine for you, there's the back for you, and there's a front again with my baby Coco. But let me just show you an example of the art. Like, this is literally just the cover of volume 1. And like, look at how stunning. I think what is so beautiful about this mangaka's art specifically is that the movement feels so real despite it being a stationary drawing. There is such beautiful detail. Like, this is a landscape drawing, and it just like, the detail and everything is just so beautiful. I'm trying to find a picture for you in regards to like movement that I think is just so well done. But this story is so heartwarming, but also there's like a lot of darker themes that are going on, especially in regards to the politics of the world. We follow our main character Coco, who wants to become a witch, and unfortunately she's not like born into a witch family, and so like she can't learn to be a witch. But there suddenly is this like strange circumstance that happens where she is brought in to become an apprentice, and she goes and lives with Quifri at his Witch Hat Atelier. So like, this is what I mean by like just the movement. Like, look at his cape and like the water of the rain and everything not hitting him. Stunning work. But she ends up going to his atelier to learn to be a witch, and there's a lot of struggle within the inner society, because this is not something that they usually do. You are usually born within a witch family, and they keep the art and the craft of being a witch in the inner circle like that. And she is somebody who is very different, and she is a special case. And at the beginning, there's like a lot of her just trying to gain her footing with the other young girls at the atelier. But then as the world progresses, we get to see the wider range of like the political strife going on in here. And they have an opposing faction called the Brim Hats. In this one, they are like brimless. So like, here's an example. The girls have like these little cone-shaped witch hats. There's no brim. So the opposing side has brims on their hats, but they very much oppose the fact that the witch society is basically gatekeeping the art of magic. And they kind of pose the question of like, it's wrong that we are gatekeeping magic, because if we allowed everybody in society to have the ability to do magic, then it would bring so much more progression into the world, and there would be less like poverty and things like that. And also, one of the things that is majorly outlawed is magic on the body. So a lot of the magic that the brim hats do are kind of like external world things, but they can't do like healing magic. So like if you were wounded, they're not allowed to do that because it kind of shapes and reforms the human body, and there is a law where you cannot change the human body in any way, given the history of like something happening years and years ago that they go into depth with the story. But I think having that question posed as a main thematic of like, how do we use power and how do we gatekeep power? And if we have power, do we have the responsibility of sharing that? Or do we allow the people who govern us to take away the right of that? I think it's so compelling to see because the main character is so young. I think she's only 10. And getting to have such a young person and a young character have to have their eyes open to the wider society struggle, I think not only brings a lot of levity in like how we are raising our younger generation, but it also is just such a compelling thing because she is obviously at an atelier and Qifrey is the one who is teaching them the ways of the world, and you can see him struggle as well as the narrative goes on. And I think it's such a compelling story. So if you were ever interested in reading a manga, I do highly recommend. And again, I think the art style from Shirahama is just so beautifully done. And I think the animation studio as well was talking about how they've been putting off animating this book because of the fact that like they want to do so much justice for it. And I have been watching the anime series, and I think it's just some of the most beautiful visual media that I've seen in so long, and it really brings a lot of magic into the inner mind palace of my mind. So I'm very happy that I got this edition, and thank you for listening to me yap about this book. I highly, highly recommend the manga and also the anime as well. And then on an update for my crafts, I am almost complete with my sweater. I have one arm. I need to do the cuff of this sleeve, and then I have to do the sleeve over here. But fantastic progress. I will definitely have this for my winter time. It will be blocked and set. I'm currently actually doing ice skating lessons, and this is a very nice, beautiful, thick sweater. So maybe if I finish it within like the next couple weeks or so, I could block this and wear this at my next ice skating thing. That is a new development for one of my hobbies. I've been wanting to do a more physical activity. One of my goals was to pick up a hobby that created like craft that I could wear, and so that's knitting. And then for my spring one, I started to do ice skating. I am not that great at it. I have never stepped foot in an ice skating rink, and one of the instructors, she is so kind. Both of them are, but one of the girls, because I'm like kind of falling behind in class, she follows me a lot more than the main instructor. But she's been saying like, you know, for somebody who's never stepped foot on ice, you're doing a fantastic job, and you're moving, and you're trying, and the fact that you're trying is what's important. And so I've been a little bit down about it because, some weeks are a little bit easier than others. I think today when I went to class, there was a struggle, but I feel a little bit more like visually I understand what's going on and what I need to be doing. It's still physically like hard to do certain skills, especially going backwards. We're learning backwards, but today we learned how to do 2-foot spins, and that was so fun and it felt so free. And so I think getting to look forward to doing that kind of stuff is what's like pushing me forward. And what the instructor said was that you just need to be confident in yourself. So I am trying to be confident. I think a big part of why I'm struggling with ice skating is because I have so much anxiety. It's not that I haven't fallen. Like, I fall almost every week. I fall at least once and I get up and I continue doing my thing. But yeah, like, I think it is just the anxiety of it. I wish like I had time on the ice before class to like kind of warm up, because halfway through class I feel more comfortable, but like at the very beginning, like I just stepped foot on the ice, I'm like, oh god, like here I am on my 2 knives on this block of ice trying to skate. Whereas like halfway through I'm like, okay, I'm not thinking too much about like slipping and falling anymore because I have like a good like grip on what I'm doing. But yeah, that's a recent development of mine. And I'm very glad that I'm doing it though, because this is something that I've wanted to do ever since I was young. It is quite an expensive thing to get into, so I do understand why, like, as I was younger, I never really did it because I'm the youngest of three and it can add up a lot. I had like seen this whole thing with Alyssa Liu's dad in an interview talking about like from before she had like announced her retirement, how much it cost, and he had discussed that it was probably like over $1 million that he had spent for her ice skating career. And I'm like, that is so intense. I mean, I'm not spending $1 million, but I'm glad I have some adult money to like have a fun little hobby like ice skating. But also, I feel like with ice skating, it like helps me kind of free my mind and be really present in the moment. I think, did I say that in the intro? I think I was talking about it when I was talking about the books I DNF'd, but recently I've been like really in my head a lot lately, and I think usually like this point in my cycle, I tend to have a lower mood. And I haven't been going to therapy because of like my insurance kind of change. So I haven't been able to see the therapist that I've been seeing for several years now. And I am confident in what we've worked on in my therapy sessions in regards to like regulating my mood and making sure that I'm in a good mental space. I haven't like spiraled down at all ever since I had last seen her, which is really good. But just recently, I feel like maybe it's like a condition of being in my late 20s, and I'm sort of in a transition in my career, which I don't talk about my career much because I don't really care for it. Like, it's what pays the bills, and I have a positive work environment. I think working from home is something that has really helped me in like the things that I've been struggling with. But yeah, it's not something that I'm like necessarily excited about. Like, I like to talk about my hobbies more because that brings me much more joy than the thing to paying my bills. But I don't have like a terrible time at my job, but I could have had a better time, and so I'm trying to transition out of that. And I think because I've been worrying about kind of changing my career or going back to school, I've just been a lot in here. And because I don't have my therapy sessions to talk about this, I have gone back to journaling. This initially was a journal that I had bought in Japan, and I was thinking about using it for school. But now that I'm kind of like back and forth about going to school again with the monetary cost of tuition and everything, or, just changing departments and kind of furthering my career at the job that I currently have, I am journaling again. Here's my little cutie Libra sword charms on there. This is a Paper Republic portfolio, so it has like inner pockets. But I decided literally this week that I was going to do a dream journal. So I have this like 2025 to 2026 refill that I got on sale for Paper Republic, and it has like this week spread and this dotted spread, and I have just been writing down my dreams. I have very vivid dreams where I wake up and I remember them, so I've just been documenting that, and I think it really helps because sometimes there are dreams that I have that are related to stress, and I think the imagery in my dreams really helps me pin down where the stress is coming from. And I didn't ever take like a dream psychology course at all in my college career, but I know like that's a thing that certain therapists do where they analyze their patients' dreams. So I thought it was really interesting for me to write that down and see. There were a few things that happened in dreams this week that I'm like, this is indicative of something, and I'm very interested to see and analyze later on. And then my main thing is my brain dump journal. There's my cute little stickers. It's I'm cool, but I cry a lot, and true. And then this little like clippy says, it looks like you're trying, do you need help? And I think that it's so cute for like a brain dump journal. And so yeah, I just have these empty pages and I write and I write and I write. Recently I got this new ink from Redingo, I think is how you pronounce it. It's a Korean brand, and this is called Dream Within a Dream. It is inspired by an Edgar Allan Poe poem, I believe, and it's a glistening type. I would like to thank Erin for introducing me to fountain pens. I just have the Kakuno Pilot in medium, and I have this beautiful, let me shake it up for you, like this beautiful ink in there, if it would focus. And there's like little, you can see like it settles down, you kind of have to shake it up, but there's like little glitter pieces, and it's this very beautiful purple. My friend said that it looks like Ditto, and I've been playing Pocopia, so I thought that that was a cute comparison. There is the swatch. Right now, because it's like new in my pen, it is very pastel-y purple, so it is a little bit harder to see when you're writing, but nobody's supposed to be reading my journal anyway, so why do you want to be able to read it? Good question, good question. But I'm supposed to be writing like a letter to some of my friends, so I might not use this ink. I might use my other Cherry Blossom ink because it's a little bit more saturated, probably easier for them to read. But I've been really enjoying journaling recently, and it's been really helpful for my mind. I think like a lot of the times I'm somebody who really ruminates on things, especially when I'm like, you know, struggling a little bit and in a down mood. I feel like being able to just journal and let the words escape my mind in this way has been really helpful. And I've also been practicing my cursive with my journal entries, so that's really fun to kind of tap back into something that I haven't done in a while. I used to just write printed, but with a fountain pen, it just feels like I'm a fancy woman doing my little journal entries in cursive, so it just amplifies the experience, makes it feel really luxe, and the fact that I have this stunning journal is such an amazing experience, and it's been really helping my mental health. So me and my brain dump and my dream journal against the world, who can stop us, really? I hope I become completely unstoppable, and whatever funk that I'm in right now just poof and dissipates away. And to the final section of this video, we are going to talk about my latest obsession. And I think this is the reason why I've been having trouble picking up books. My friend Michelle, the other day on Instagram, she posted on her stories that the books were giving her the ick. And I was like, I could not relate to that woman any more than I already do, but she's just so relatable and so funny. I enjoy chatting with her, and I'm so grateful that the internet has brought us together. But she was talking about the books giving her the ick, and I was like, you know, the books have been giving me the ick, and I think I know why. And that's because my latest obsession has been Chinese dramas. I am so like tapped into my younger self right now because, you know, I'm doing ice skating and that's something that I've always done since I was like really, really young. And I've been like doing journaling again, and that's something that I used to do a lot more, especially like when I was younger in college. And I'm like learning a like fiber arts thing, and there's just like a lot of things that I've been doing for my younger self recently. And I didn't think Chinese dramas was me tapping into my younger self until I realized like my introduction to media was a lot of like Chinese kung fu films because my dad really loved like kung fu, like fighting action films. So I watched a lot of like Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Jackie Chan. There's like several other Chinese actors that are really big that I just can't remember their names right now. It's not pulling out of my mind palace at the moment. And then also my grandmother loved to watch these Chinese dramas that her sister would send her. And literally every single time I come home from school, she's just like watching this Chinese drama in the background. And I would be like, I have no idea what's going on. She would watch them dubbed in Vietnamese. My grandma does not know Mandarin. But it's just so funny, like hearing whatever was going on in her show, like not knowing what the visuals of everything were, but hearing like these people being like, cut off their heads, like, and then, you know, being like, Emperor, please have mercy. And it was just so interesting to be like, I'm trying to study here. And she's like watching people get punished by the Emperor. So it just feels kind of nostalgic being back in my Chinese drama era. Anyway, so the reason why I have just been so compelled, body and soul, is because of this drama called Pursuit of Jade. I had heard about it from somewhere, and then I remember Reagan from Peru's project had posted it on her story, so I was like, I'm gonna make a note of this. And like literally that night, I had a family dinner, and our family friend was telling my mom, like, oh, like me and my wife were watching this drama called Pursuit of Jade, and I think it's such a fun show. You should watch it. I think you'd like it. And my mom was like, oh, like, where is it on? And he was like, Netflix. And I was like, I have Netflix. And I also planned to watch it anyway. So we'll watch it together. So me and my mom started it. My mom started it and I was like not fully like tapped in. And then something switched and I was like tapped in. Okay, so with Pursuit of Jade, we are following our main character, Changye, who is the eldest daughter, and unfortunately, her parents, both of her parents, are murdered by bandits. And so she has to kind of take over the family head and take care of her younger sister, who's only like 5 or 6 years old. She's very young. And so in order to like help take care of her younger sister, she is a pig butcher. And the thing is, like, she butchers pigs because her father used to. So she learned the art of butchering from her father. It's not like just some random shit she picked up. Like, it's in her line of family. And so she's doing that. Like, the whole village is gossiping about her, saying, like, da 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 da, this and that. You know, Asian aunties love to gossip about the plight that you're going through. And one day she's doing her like job and she's coming home and Changye finds somebody in the snow and she thinks that person's dead and she's like, fuck, you know, like, and then she's like, I'm so sorry, like I didn't mean to like disturb you in your rest. And as she's like panicking, she sees like plumes, like it's cold, it's like snowing, and she sees like plumes of breath. So she's like, this person's alive, and she like picks him up, hefts him over her shoulder, and carries him home. At this point in like the story, this is like the first episode, they talk about like people being kind of wary of like newcomers into the village. She doesn't really care about this newcomer coming into the village because he has this big like cut and gash and he's dying. And she's like, I can't let this random man die. Even if he's a stranger, I have like a moral obligation to help save him. And she brings him into her home, and one thing leads to another where she is in need of a marriage of convenience so that she's able to have ownership of her family home because her uncle, I believe, is trying to take their home and kind of kick her out and leave her and her sister basically abandoned with nothing. And so she needs to take her home and like make sure that the contract and everything is solidified legally, and she needs a husband for that because we're in like historical China, so like women don't have as many rights as men do. And so that lovely beautiful man has to do a marriage of convenience for her, and for him it is also of convenience for him to marry her. And the story seems like really cute, right? Like, oh, marriage, convenience, romance. But then we kind of get involved with the man she saved, Jen, and he has a very interesting background of who he is, and that brings in this whole pot of political intrigue. And the political intrigue is one thing, and like the slow burn romance is another. And it's just such a compelling story. And I think not only that, but they also have like a second lead couple where they have a not so like sweet and happy romance going on. And they have a very, I wouldn't even call it romance, but like it's a very complex kind of intimate relationship that's going on with the second lead. And I think visually, it is such a beautifully done drama. The director frames the actors in such a beautiful way, and like the scenery of things is just so stunning. And the music score is also very compelling. Like, I hear the first notes of the main OST, and I'm like, I'm getting into this shit. Oh my gosh, it's so great. And I think the actors have done such an amazing job. It's such an amazing story. And I think there's not only like the seriousness of these moments, but the like comedic points in the story are also really fun and very timely. I feel like if I knew Mandarin, some of the jokes would be even funnier for me to like hear, because obviously with different languages, there's like wordplay that goes on that I'm unaware of because I don't know Mandarin. But it is such a fun, like, story in general, and just the slow burn romance and political intrigue. I feel like we don't get that often in books. And given Pursuit of Jade is like a 40 episode series, I mean, there's only one season, if you would call it that. Whereas, like, you know, with something like Grey's Anatomy, we have like 13 plus seasons. A 41 time seasoned show isn't that bad. And I think there's so much compelling stuff. And people said that it's based off of this novel called Chasing Jade, and they had to cut out some like character things in that novel to make the show even 40 episodes. So I'm like, damn, I wish we had 60 episodes. Like, I would definitely love to hear more about like the nature of the characters, and it's just such a compelling thing. And I think that's why my reading hasn't felt as exciting, because I feel like sometimes I don't get to sit with the characters and have like these small moments and things that we get in like a Chinese drama. I think it's so beautiful to like get to sit and know our characters, and I just haven't found a book like that in a while. And so like my reading has been kind of like off because of that. But after I finished Pursuit of Jade, I ended up watching another drama called The Princess Royal, which has the same male lead in Pursuit of Jade. And that one was a really interesting one because the main characters in that, we see them when they're like much, much older. They're like in their 40s or 50s, and they have a very untimely end. One of them thinks that their partner murdered them, and because that they're being poisoned to death, they ask for that other person to be killed if they end up dying. And because of this sort of experience they have as they're dying, they both reflect on their relationships with each other and like with other people, and they think like, I hope that in another life I can like redo my choices and actions so I don't die with so much regret on my heart. And so they end up being reincarnated back to their younger selves. and they basically get a second chance at life. Our main character, she is the crown princess, and then our male lead, he is like a lower minister, and they end up having a like political marriage, and we get to see them because they do remember their past life as they had grown up and like kind of made each other miserable, and they are trying to not only work out their relationship with one another, they kind of want the other to have a happy life, and then they end up realizing like actually our happy life would be us together, but us together actually working with one another. And I think the romance of that was very interesting and compelling, and getting to see our main female lead deal with like her emotions, and as somebody who was raised as the princess, she's not somebody who is very open about affection, and so getting to see that journey, I think it felt very personal to me, as I'm not somebody I think that really expresses romantic affection to other people very openly, and that's something like our main character really struggles with, and her like romantic counterpart also like brings that up as like a gripe to her. Getting to see her process and be able to communicate and feel safe in her relationship to be vulnerable in that way was such an interesting character arc in like a romantic sort of drama, but also they have such an interesting political plot going on in all of this. Because she's the princess, she's involved a lot with the inner court, and there are certain things that she gets involved in, and then she has to investigate for her father, the emperor, and it just unties all of this very interesting political intrigue. I think with historical dramas, that's like one of my favorite things, the political plot and like all the layers of things that these like noble people will go through to gain power for themselves. I think it's such an intriguing like plot point to have, and yeah, it was just so well done in that. I feel like the first episode or so I was like, this is kind of annoying because there's like a certain like second male lead character that like her and him have this whole sordid history, and it was just so annoying, but I kind of persevered because I was interested to see how this like second life was going, and I really got really into it once like the political intrigue was going on, and then that slow conversation of like, what does romance and trusting and loving somebody look like in the point of view of somebody with a high power status like the princess. I think it's just so interesting, and I think the actors did a really good job in that one, and very glad I watched that. And because I loved Pursuit of Jade so much, I had like read online on Reddit that the director actually directed this other Chinese drama called Blossom 2 years prior to Pursuit of Jade, and so people were discussing that that was something that you should watch if you loved Pursuit of Jade. It has a quite different like storyline and characters, but visually very stunning because again, it's the same director. And this story for Blossom, we are following a like, I think she is the wife of like a minister, like of a higher standing family, and she ends up dying. And the way she dies with this other general who is like saving her, and her and that general, because of their death being tied together, have a tied destiny. And so she wakes up as her younger self, and he wakes up as his younger self as well, but has no memories of their past life. And so she kind of is like, with all of the knowledge that I had at the age that I died at, I'm going to change my fate. And it's a very interesting storyline because she has all these memories of what happens, and he has no idea who she is. There's like an inkling of maybe, but he is like really like, he kind of has amnesia, and her changing her life has impacts on what happens in the political arena in this show. And it's interesting because she's only like a minister's daughter. She's not like a princess or anything, but she makes a lot of different choices because the main male lead is a general of the emperor's army, And so he has some political sway, given that he is somebody that the emperor really trusts. And the story kind of kicks off, obviously, with their death and them reincarnating into this second life. And like the main intrigue of this plot is because she remembers what happens in the past. She wants to stop the main male lead from falling into this path of revenge, because before they died, the reason why they died was because he was kind of revolting and helping a rebellion. And the main reason why he was doing that was because he was seeking revenge for the death of his uncle, who he believes was wrongly killed. And she is trying to change that because she knows, like, in her heart that he is like a much more peaceful man than what life has dealt him. And I think this one, not only is the romance really beautifully done, and like he is a man who yearns, like big time yearner, which was so fun. I think the actor really brings like this very like childlike expression to when he is with her. Like when you can clearly tell he is in love with her, because there's this childlike innocence that he has around her that I think is really well acted. But for like the scenes with political intrigue, it is so interesting. And in this one, there's like a lot of political dynamics within the family that we get to see. And for our main character, Zhao, her family is so fucked up because she has a stepmother, and getting to see how her stepmother wants to ruin Zhao's life to bring up her biological daughter in this family, and how interesting it is where like political intrigue within the government also parallels a lot of the politics within the family in this drama. And I think it was just so compelling. I really, really enjoyed that one. And I found out the two leads are going to be in a new drama together sometime later this year. So very excited to see that. But in my C-drama era, I had to yap about that for a while because it is just my new obsession. So if you have any books, it could be a series, it doesn't have to be one book, that you think has compelling political intrigue, do let me know. Like, it can have a slow burn romance, but the romance part isn't necessary. It would be nice to have it because a lot of these C-dramas do have a romance. Most of them have a romance. But yeah, the political intrigue in these Chinese dramas is just chef's kiss. I do love a historical drama. I've always been a historical drama girl, but yeah, these Chinese dramas have really solidified it for me. It's just so, I could talk about it for forever. That is it for today's video. Do let me know what you've been up to craft-wise, reading-wise. If you've been feeling a little bit iffy about life, do let me know that as well, because we're all in this together, as High School Musical once sang about. And community is really important to keep our heads floating above the water. So do share what you'd like to share in the comments below. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!